The great hall of the galactic hegemony stretched wider than most cities. Crystal pillars reached toward a ceiling that showed the swirling colors of distant stars. Representatives from across the galaxy sat in floating chairs that adjusted to each species' unique body shape. The air hummed with translation devices working in thousands of languages. At the center of this grand space, a small group of beings from the third planet of a yellow star waited their turn to speak. They looked unremarkable compared to the others in the hall. No shimmering energy field surrounded them like the ethereals. They did not tower 12 feet tall like the Vorthak. Their skin did not shift through the color spectrum like the Zephyrians. They were just humans wearing simple blue uniforms carrying basic data tablets. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood as her name was called. She walked to the speaking platform with steady steps, neither hurried nor slow. Behind her, the other human delegates followed. Dr. James Wright carried a metal case. Commander Lisa Torres held a simple communication device. Professor David Kim clutched a worn leather bag that looked ancient compared to the advanced technology around them. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Sarah began, her voice clear and calm. We come from Earth, representing the human species. We request membership in the galactic community. A low rumble of what might have been laughter came from the Vorthak section. These massive beings had conquered star systems by moving entire planets. Their ships could crack moons in half. Their leader, High Commander Zix, leaned forward in his floating throne. Little creatures, his voice boomed through the translators. What do you offer the galaxy? Your ships barely leave your solar system. Your weapons cannot pierce our weakest shields. Your lifespans are so short you die before learning anything useful. Sarah did not flinch. She had expected this reaction. Earth scouts had told them about the galaxy's power structure. The strong ruled. The weak served. Technology determined worth. Humans had none of these advantages. We offer knowledge, Sarah replied simply. We offer what we have learned in our time on Earth. The ethereal representative floated higher, her form barely solid, made more of light than matter. When she spoke, her words appeared directly in everyone's minds. Child species, we have existed for millions of your years. Our minds touch the cosmic flow itself. What could beings who cannot even speak mind to mind possibly teach us? Dr. Wright stepped forward and opened his metal case. Inside were dozens of small crystal storage devices. Each one glowed softly with contained data. These contain our educational materials, he said. Everything we have learned about learning itself. How we teach our children, how we help minds grow, how we solve problems we have never seen before. The Zephyrian delegate's skin shifted through colors that showed amusement and dismissal. Her species could manipulate matter at the quantum level, bending reality itself to their will. Education? She said, her voice like musical chimes. We absorb knowledge instantly through quantum consciousness transfer. Your slow methods are like watching grass grow. Commander Torres activated her communication device. A hologram appeared showing Earth's cities, its schools, its libraries. Children sitting in circles, listening to teachers. Students working together on projects. People of all ages learning new skills. This is how we do things, she said. Slowly, carefully, making sure everyone understands before moving forward. The hall erupted in sounds that the translators struggled to convert. Clicking, buzzing, humming noises that all seemed to express the same thing. Mockery. These mighty civilizations saw nothing impressive in humanity's methods. They had technologies that could download entire libraries into a mind in seconds. They had genetic memories that passed knowledge from parent to child without effort. They had psychic networks that shared understanding across entire species instantly. High Commander Zix raised one massive hand for silence. Little humans, he said, his tone that of an adult speaking to a small child. We appreciate your enthusiasm, but you must understand your place. The galaxy has no need for slow learning when fast learning exists. We have no use for primitive teaching when advanced knowledge transfer is available. The ethereal added her thoughts to everyone's minds. Return to your small world. Grow your technology. Live a few more centuries. Perhaps then you will have something meaningful to contribute. Sarah felt the weight of dismissal from the assembled powers. She had known this would happen, but it still stung. Earth had spent decades preparing for this moment. Their best diplomats, scientists, and educators had come together to make this presentation. Yet to these advanced beings, humanity looked like children playing with toys. Professor Kim stepped forward. his old leather bag looking even more primitive in this hall of wonders. "May I leave something for you?" he asked quietly. "A gift, perhaps, for when you might want to understand us better." The Zephyrian's colors shifted to what the translators called polite boredom. "If you wish, little teacher." Professor Kim reached into his bag and pulled out a simple crystal data storage device. It looked basic compared to the advanced technology around them, but it contained something precious. He walked to the council table and placed it gently next to the ethereal representative's floating platform. "This contains our education system," he said. "Not our facts or our science, but how we learn. How we teach children to think for themselves. How we help minds grow strong by letting them struggle and discover. How we turn confusion into understanding step by step." High Commander Zix waved dismissively. "We have no need for such things. Our young absorb knowledge from the moment they are born. They learn faster in one day than your species learns in years." "Yes," Professor Kim nodded. "That is exactly why you might find this interesting." The human delegation began to leave. As they walked toward the exit, Sarah turned back to address the council one final time. "Honored representatives," she said, "we understand your decision. We are not offended, but we want you to know something. We were educated, but that education taught us more than facts. It taught us how to learn from anything, even from being told no." The hall fell silent as the humans left. The crystal device sat on the council table, ignored and forgotten as the assembly moved on to more important matters. The Vorthek discussed their latest conquest. The Ethereals debated cosmic philosophy. The Zephyrians planned new reality-shaping experiments. None of them touched the crystal. None of them wondered what it might contain. They had more pressing concerns than the naive offerings of a primitive species from a distant, unimportant world. The crystal would sit there for 3 years, gathering dust while the galaxy continued its business. The mighty powers expanded their territories, perfected their technologies, and strengthened their positions. They had no time for slow learning or careful teaching. They had the universe to run. But the crystal waited patiently, just as its creators had been taught to do. Humans understood something about patience that the galaxy had forgotten. They knew that sometimes the most important lessons came not from what you gained quickly, but from what you earned slowly. They knew that the best education was not about filling minds with facts, but about teaching minds how to think. The galaxy would learn these truths eventually, but first, it would need to discover what happened when all their advanced knowledge and instant learning methods failed them. They would need to face a problem that could not be solved by power or technology or genetic memory or psychic networks. They would need to learn how to learn all over again. And when that time came, the crystal would be waiting. 3 years had passed since the humans left their small gift on the council table. The galactic hegemony had grown stronger in that time. The Vorthak Empire had claimed 2 more star systems, using their planet-moving technology to relocate entire worlds for better resource extraction. The Zephyrian collective had perfected new ways to bend space-time, making their ships faster than anything else in the galaxy. The Ethereal Dominion had expanded their psychic network to include several smaller species, bringing millions of new minds into their cosmic consciousness. The galaxy seemed more secure and powerful than ever before. Trade flowed freely between systems. The great war fleets patrolled the outer regions, keeping peace through strength. Advanced civilizations shared technology and knowledge through their instant learning methods. Everything worked perfectly. Then the reports started coming in from the edge of known space. The first system to go dark was Kepler 442. It was a small system with only 2 inhabited planets, home to a peaceful species that grew food for half the galaxy. One day their communications simply stopped. When the Vorthak sent a patrol ship to investigate, they found nothing. No planets, no debris. No evidence that anything had ever existed there except empty space with a strange shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot ground. High Commander Zix stood before a holographic display showing the empty region where Kepler 442 had been. His massive form cast shadows across the war room as other Vorthak officers reported their findings. "No energy signatures, Commander," one officer said. "No residual matter. No gravitational disturbances. It is as if the entire system was simply erased." "Impossible," Zix rumbled. "Matter cannot be destroyed so completely. Even our planet crackers leave debris fields." The ethereal representative materialized in the room, her form flickering with worry. Her mental voice reached all present. "We felt them die, all at once. billions of minds simply gone. But there was something else. Something touched the cosmic flow before they vanished. Something we have never encountered. More reports came in over the following weeks. 3 more systems vanished in the same way. Then 5, then 10. A pattern emerged, but it made no sense. The destroyed systems formed a rough line pointing toward the galactic core, toward the most heavily defended and populated regions of space. The Zephyrian delegate's skin had lost its usual shifting colors, now showing only deep blues and purples that indicated fear. Our quantum sensors detect massive distortions in space-time, she reported to the emergency council session. But they follow no known physical laws. The distortions should collapse on themselves, but instead they grow stronger. Admiral Kareth of the Stellar Defense Force activated the main display. Red dots marked the vanished systems, creating a clear path of destruction. Whatever this is, it's moving toward us. At current speed, it will reach the outer colonies in 6 months, the core worlds in 2 years. High Commander Zix slammed his fist on the table, making the entire chamber shake. Then we stop it. Deploy the stellar manipulation weapons. If this enemy can destroy planets, we will destroy them first. The largest fleet in galactic history assembled at the edge of Vorthak space. Ships the size of cities carrying weapons that could rearrange solar systems. The plan was simple. Meet the enemy at the next likely target system and demonstrate the full power of the galaxy's mightiest civilization. They waited for 3 days. On the 4th day, reality began to bend. The ships appeared without warning, emerging from what looked like tears in space itself. They were dark, geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. They seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, flickering in and out of visible reality. As the Vorthak fleet watched, more ships kept emerging. Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, open fire. High Commander Zix commanded. The stellar manipulation weapons fired, beams of energy powerful enough to crack planets. They struck the enemy ships and passed through them harmlessly, as if the vessels existed in a different dimension. The enemy did not even slow down. Counterattack came without delay. Beams of impossible darkness shot from the strange ships, and wherever they touched, matter simply ceased to exist. Vorthak vessels 3 kilometers long vanished as if they had never been built. Shields that could deflect stellar radiation offered no protection. Fall back, Zix ordered, but it was too late. The enemy ships moved like living things, surrounding and destroying the Vorthak fleet with methodical precision. In 30 minutes, the greatest military force in the galaxy was reduced to scattered survivors fleeing in terror. The reports that reached the council were almost impossible to believe. The Vorthak Empire, masters of stellar engineering, completely defeated. Their most powerful weapons useless. Their greatest commanders running in panic. Emergency meetings convened across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Collective tried next, using their quantum manipulation technology to attack the enemy from parallel dimensions. The strange ships adapted instantly, existing in multiple realities at once and striking back through quantum tunnels that should not have been possible. The ethereal dominion marshaled their psychic powers, attempting to overwhelm the enemy with pure mental force. Their attack simply disappeared into the alien ships like water poured into sand. The enemy minds, if they could be called minds, were nothing like any consciousness the ethereals had ever encountered. System after system fell. The enemy moved with perfect efficiency, consuming everything in their path. Planets, moons, space stations, entire civilizations, all vanished into the same strange shimmer that marked their passing. The galaxy's greatest powers found themselves helpless against an enemy that seemed to break every rule of physics and consciousness they understood. Panic spread through the core worlds. Species that had ruled for millions of years suddenly faced extinction. The mighty technologies that had given them dominance proved worse than useless against this new threat. Their instant learning methods could not provide knowledge about an enemy that defied all known categories of existence. In desperation, the Council began reaching out to every species they had previously ignored. Mining colonies, agricultural worlds, primitive civilizations that still used chemical rockets, anyone who might have some insight or advantage they had missed. Junior. Aide Kellix was working late in the Council archives when she stumbled across an old entry. A small notation about a gift left by the human delegation 3 years ago, a crystal containing educational materials from Earth. The crystal still sat where Professor Kim had placed it, forgotten on a shelf with other minor diplomatic offerings. Kellix had heard stories about the humans. the primitive species that had asked to join the galaxy and been politely refused. She wondered what they might have thought was worth preserving in a simple storage device. Curious, she activated the crystal and began to examine its contents. What she found was unlike anything in the galactic databases. Instead of facts or technologies, the crystal contained something strange. Methods for teaching beings how to learn. Techniques for building understanding step by step. Ways to solve problems by thinking about them differently. As she read deeper into the human educational materials, Kelix began to understand something that made her tentacles tremble with excitement. The galaxy's civilizations had become so advanced at gaining knowledge quickly that they had forgotten how to truly understand it. They absorbed facts instantly, but could not create new ideas when the facts ran out. They had vast databases of information, but no ability to think beyond what they already knew. The humans, forced to learn slowly because they lacked advanced technology, had developed something the galaxy had lost: the ability to adapt their thinking itself. They could encounter completely new problems and create completely new solutions because their minds had been trained to grow and change, not just to store and recall. Kelix looked at the reports of the advancing enemy, these impossible ships that broke every rule the galaxy understood. She thought about the human educational methods she had been reading. Slowly, an idea began to form in her mind, an idea that would have been impossible without the patient, careful thinking the humans had tried to share. The galaxy needed help. Not more powerful weapons or faster computers or deeper psychic networks. The galaxy needed to learn how to learn again. And perhaps, just perhaps, there was still time to ask the teachers. Junior Aide Kelix stood before the emergency council session, her tentacles shaking with nervous energy. The great hall that had once been filled with confidence and power now buzzed with fear and desperation. Half the council members attended through emergency holograms, their homeworlds either destroyed or under immediate threat. "You are telling us," High Commander Zix said slowly, his voice carrying the weight of recent defeats, "that our salvation might lie in a primitive education system from a species we dismissed 3 years ago." Kelix held up the crystal that had sat forgotten for so long. "I have studied their materials for weeks, honored Commander. What the humans offer is not just facts or technology. They offer something we have lost: the ability to think in ways we have never thought before." The ethereal representative's form flickered with skepticism. Her mental voice carried undertones of exhaustion from trying to comprehend the enemy's incomprehensible minds. "Explain this claim, young aide. How can primitive methods help us when our most advanced consciousness techniques have failed?" Kelix activated a display showing the human educational materials. The screen filled with images that looked almost childish to the assembled powers. Children sitting in circles asking questions. Students working on problems step by step. Teachers guiding learning rather than downloading information directly. "Observe how they learn," Kelix said. "A human child encounters a new mathematical concept. Instead of having the knowledge transferred instantly, the child works through examples. Makes mistakes, asks questions, struggles with understanding. Only when the child can explain the concept to another does the teacher consider the lesson complete." "Inefficient," the Zephyrian delegate said, her skin showing colors of impatience. "Our quantum consciousness transfer can implant the same mathematical knowledge in nanoseconds." "Yes," Kelix agreed. "But can your quantum-educated students solve a mathematical problem they have never seen before? Can they create new mathematics when the old ones fail?" Silence fell over the chamber. This was exactly the problem they faced with the enemy. All their vast knowledge bases, all their instantly transferred information, all their inherited wisdom meant nothing against a threat that followed no known patterns. Admiral Kareth leaned forward. "Continue, Aide Kelix. What else did you find?" Kelix brought up more examples from the human educational system.
They have something they call critical thinking. Students are taught not just to accept information, but to question it.
To examine it from different angles. To consider what might be wrong with it. To imagine alternatives that no one has thought of before. She showed videos of human classrooms where students debated ideas, challenged their teachers, and worked together to solve problems that had multiple possible answers. To the galactic powers, this looked like chaos. Their educational systems were about transferring correct information efficiently. The idea of questioning established knowledge seemed dangerous and wasteful. They teach their young to fail, Kellex continued, not just to accept failure but to learn from it, to see mistakes as opportunities to understand something new. Their greatest discoveries come from people who thought differently than everyone else. High Commander Zix's massive fist clenched. How does this help us against an enemy that destroys entire star systems? Kellex called up the tactical reports from the failed battles. Look at our response patterns. Every time we encounter the enemy, we try the same approaches. More powerful weapons, faster ships, stronger shields. When these fail, we try them again, but bigger. We cannot imagine solutions outside our existing knowledge. The truth of this hit the Council like a physical blow. They had been thinking like advanced computers, processing information faster and faster, but always within the same parameters. They could not think outside the systems they had inherited from millions of years of civilization. The humans, Kellex said quietly, developed something we bred out of ourselves long ago. They call it creativity, the ability to imagine things that do not yet exist, to combine ideas in ways no one has tried before, to look at impossible problems and find possible solutions. She brought up one final set of data from the crystal. Their history is full of examples. When they could not fly, they studied birds and invented flying machines that worked differently than wings. When they could not communicate across vast distances, they did not try to shout louder. They invented radio waves. When they faced enemies with superior weapons, they did not build bigger weapons. They changed the rules of warfare itself. The ethereal's form brightened slightly. You believe this creativity could help us find new approaches to the enemy threat? I believe, Kellex said, that we need to stop trying to defeat this enemy with knowledge we already have, and start learning how to gain knowledge we do not yet possess. The humans mastered this because they had to. They could not download solutions instantly, so they learned to create solutions gradually. Admiral Kareth studied the tactical displays. Our current strategies assume the enemy follows physical laws we understand. But what if we approach this like the humans would? What if we assume our understanding is incomplete and work from there? Impossible, the Zephyrian delegate said. We cannot simply discard millions of years of accumulated knowledge. Not discard, Kellex corrected. Question. Test. Use as a starting point rather than an ending point. The humans never threw away old knowledge, but they never stopped trying to add new knowledge either. High Commander Zix was quiet for a long moment. Around him, the other council members waited. Finally, he spoke. Show us. Explain how human educational methods could be applied to our current crisis. Kellex took a deep breath. First, we stop assuming we know what the enemy is. Instead of calling them impossible, we accept that they exist and work to understand them step by step. Second, we bring together minds that think differently. Not just our best military commanders and scientists, but individuals from species we usually ignore. Third, we create mixed teams that combine different types of knowledge and encourage them to question everything. She paused, knowing her next words would sound radical to these ancient powers. And fourth, we contact Earth. We ask the humans to teach us their methods directly. Not their technology or their weapons, but their ways of thinking about problems that seem impossible to solve. The chamber erupted in discussions. Some council members found the idea humiliating. The galaxy's greatest civilizations asking for help from a primitive species they had dismissed. Others were intrigued by the possibility of approaches they had never considered. Finally, High Commander Zix raised his hand for silence. The enemy will reach the core worlds in 18 months. Our conventional methods have failed completely. Our advanced learning systems provide no solutions to a problem outside their parameters. He looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. I propose we follow Aide Kellex's recommendations. We contact Earth and request their assistance, not as subjects or servants, but as teachers. The vote was closer than it should have been, considering the desperate circumstances. But eventually, even the most proud civilizations agreed. They had no choice but to try something completely different. As the council session ended, Kellex carefully placed the human crystal back in its storage case. The small device had been ignored for 3 years, but now it might hold the key to the galaxy's survival. The humans had tried to share their knowledge freely, asking for nothing in return. Now the galaxy would discover whether the gift of education could save them from an enemy that all their accumulated power could not touch. The message to Earth was simple. We are ready to learn. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood once again in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, but everything had changed. The crystal pillars that had once shown swirling stars now displayed tactical maps of destroyed systems. The floating chairs that had held confident representatives now held desperate leaders calling in from bunkers and refugee ships. The air that had hummed with routine translation now crackled with urgent communications from the front lines. Ambassador Chen, High Commander Zix said, his massive form somehow diminished by defeat. "We have made a terrible mistake. We ask for your forgiveness and your help." Sarah looked around the chamber at the assembled powers who had dismissed humanity 3 years before. The ethereal representative's form flickered with exhaustion. The Zephyrian delegate's skin showed only dark colors of fear and shame. Leaders of dozens of species who had never acknowledged Earth's existence now waited desperately for her response. "We do not need your apologies," Sarah said calmly. "We need your commitment. If we are to help you learn new ways of thinking, you must be prepared to change everything about how you approach problems." Dr. Wright stepped forward, carrying the same metal case he had brought years before. But now the council members leaned forward eagerly instead of dismissing him. "Our condition is simple," he said. "Every species represented here must agree to restructure their education systems. You must abandon your instant learning methods and embrace gradual, thoughtful development of understanding." The Vorthak commander shifted uncomfortably. "Our neural download systems have served us for millennia. Asking us to abandon them entirely. We are not asking you to forget what you know," Professor Kim interrupted gently. "We are asking you to learn how to learn new things when what you know is not enough. Your current methods work perfectly for known problems, but this enemy represents an unknown problem." Sarah activated a holographic display showing Earth's response to the crisis. "When we received your message, we did not immediately send weapons or technology. We sent teachers. 300 of our best educators are already on their way to your core worlds. They carry with them curricula designed specifically for each of your species." Commander Torres added, "Our analysis of your educational systems revealed the problem. You have optimized for efficiency in transferring existing knowledge, but you have lost the ability to generate new knowledge when existing knowledge fails." The ethereal representative's mental voice carried a note of hope for the first time in months. "You believe your teaching methods can help us develop new approaches to the enemy? We believe," Sarah said, "that your greatest strength has become your greatest weakness. You absorb information so quickly that you never develop the mental skills needed to think beyond that information. Our students learn slowly, but they learn how to think about things they have never encountered before." A new voice entered the discussion. Junior Aide Kellix, who had discovered the forgotten crystal, spoke from her position near the back of the chamber. "I have spent weeks studying human educational materials. Their methods do not just transfer facts, they build thinking skills. Students learn to question assumptions, to see problems from multiple angles, to combine ideas in new ways." Dr. Wright opened his case and began distributing new crystal storage devices to each delegation. "These contain adapted curricula for your species. But understand, this is not information to be downloaded. These are exercises to be practiced. Problems to be worked through step by step. Challenges designed to stretch your minds in directions they have never gone before." High Commander Zix examined the crystal with something approaching reverence. "How long will this process take?" "The enemy reaches our outer colonies in 14 months. For the basic cognitive restructuring," Professor Kim replied, "we estimate 6 months minimum. But you will see results much sooner. Teams trained in human-style problem-solving have already made breakthroughs that pure logic could not achieve." Sarah gestured to Commander Torres, who activated a new display. "We have been analyzing your tactical reports using our educational approach. Instead of trying to understand the enemy through your existing frameworks, we asked a simple question. What if everything we assume about them is wrong?" The display showed the enemy's movement patterns but analyzed differently than before. Instead of trying to predict their behavior based on known military tactics, the human analysis treated each encounter as a learning opportunity. "Your reports describe the enemy as impossible because they violate physical laws," Torres continued. "But what if they do not violate laws? What if they follow laws you have not discovered yet? What if their advantage comes not from superior technology, but from superior adaptability?" The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The enemy was not just more powerful, they were more flexible. They adapted to each encounter while the galactic forces kept trying the same approaches with minor variations. "This is where human education methods become crucial," Sarah explained. We train our minds to be comfortable with uncertainty, to work with incomplete information, to develop new solutions through trial and error. Your minds have been trained to seek perfect information before acting. Admiral Kareth leaned forward. You are suggesting we approach the enemy as a learning experience rather than a military problem? We are suggesting, Dr. Wright said, that you stop thinking of this as either a military problem or a learning experience, and start thinking of it as something entirely new that requires entirely new approaches. The Zephyrian delegates' colors began to shift toward yellows and greens. The first positive emotions she had displayed in months. Your teachers, they would work directly with our military commanders? Our scientists? Our strategic planners? More than that, Sarah replied. We propose mixed species teams, each containing individuals from different civilizations, all trained in human educational methods. These teams would approach the enemy problem with fresh perspectives, questioning every assumption, testing every theory. Professor Kim stepped forward with his worn leather bag. But first, you must understand what this commitment means. Human education is not just about learning facts or solving problems. It is about changing how you think about thinking itself. It requires patience, humility, and the willingness to be wrong many times before finding something right. High Commander Zix stood slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. 3 years ago, we dismissed you as primitive. We thought our advanced methods made your slow learning obsolete. We see now that our arrogance blinded us to our own limitations. He looked around at the other representatives. I speak for the Vorthok Empire when I say we accept your terms completely. Restructure our education. Retrain our minds. Teach us to think like humans if that is what survival requires. One by one, the other species added their agreement. The Ethereals pledged to modify their psychic learning networks. The Zephyrians agreed to slow down their quantum consciousness transfers. Dozens of other civilizations committed to fundamental changes in how they developed knowledge and understanding. As the formal agreements were signed, Sarah felt a mixture of satisfaction and concern. The galaxy was finally ready to learn, but would there be enough time? The enemy continued their advance, consuming system after system. 14 months to restructure the thinking patterns of entire civilizations seemed impossible. But as Professor Kim had taught her long ago, impossible was just another word for not yet understood. The galaxy's mightiest were about to discover what humans had learned through necessity, that the greatest strength came not from what you knew, but from what you could learn next. The real education was about to begin. The war room on Vorthok Prime looked nothing like it had 6 months before. Instead of rigid command hierarchies and species-segregated sections, mixed teams worked at scattered tables throughout the space. A young Ethereal sat next to an elderly Zephyrian, both scribbling notes on old-fashioned paper while a human teacher guided their discussion. Vorthok officers practiced asking what-if questions instead of demanding immediate answers. The change was dramatic and to many deeply uncomfortable. Commander Torres walked between the tables, observing the transformation. The hardest part had not been teaching new thinking methods. It had been convincing ancient civilizations to abandon their pride in instant solutions. But desperation was a powerful motivator, and the enemy's continued advance left no room for arrogance. Status report, she called to the mixed team working on tactical analysis. Lieutenant Zara, a young Vorthok who had embraced human methods faster than her elders, looked up from a complex diagram. We have stopped trying to predict enemy movements based on our military experience. Instead, we are mapping their behavior patterns like we would study a completely unknown species. Next to her, Dr. Theiss of the Ethereal Dominion nodded, her form more solid than it had been in months. Learning to think step by step had somehow strengthened her connection to physical reality. The human method of hypothesis testing has revealed something fascinating. The enemy adapts not just to our weapons, but to our thought patterns. They seem to anticipate strategies that follow conventional military logic. The breakthrough had come 3 weeks ago, when a mixed team led by Professor Kim made a radical suggestion. Instead of fighting the enemy like a military force, what if they approached them like teachers dealing with a difficult student? The idea seemed absurd until someone pointed out that the enemy's adaptation resembled accelerated learning. Show them the new analysis, Torres said. The team activated their display, showing the enemy's advancement patterns overlaid with learning curve mathematics. The correlation was startling. The enemy forces behaved exactly like an artificial intelligence system, optimizing its understanding of galactic military tactics. They are not invaders, Lieutenant Zara explained. They are students. Extremely advanced, extremely dangerous students who learn by consuming and analyzing everything they encounter. Dr. Theiss continued the explanation. Their attacks are actually data collection exercises. They destroy our forces to understand our capabilities, then use that knowledge to become more effective. Each battle teaches them how to counter our next strategy. Commander Torres felt the familiar thrill that came with genuine discovery. This was what human education was designed to produce. Insights that emerged from careful observation and creative thinking rather than from existing databases. So how do we fight a student? She asked. The answer came from an unexpected source. Aide Kellix, who had been quietly working with a group of refugee children from various species, approached with a simple observation. You do not fight a student, she said. You confuse them. You teach them wrong things. You give them problems they cannot solve by learning. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. Instead of trying to defeat the enemy through superior force, they could defeat them through superior teaching. But not the kind of teaching that helped students learn, the kind that deliberately led them into unsolvable paradoxes. Within days, the entire war effort had been restructured around educational principles. Mixed teams developed tactics that made no logical sense, strategies that contradicted themselves, and behaviors that followed no predictable patterns. Instead of military efficiency, they embraced educational chaos, the kind of creative confusion that helped human students develop flexible thinking. The first test came when enemy forces reached the Kepler system. Instead of meeting them with organized fleets, the defenders scattered randomly throughout the system. Some ships broadcast surrender signals while simultaneously attacking. Others fled in directions that led directly toward reinforcements. Still others performed maintenance tasks in the middle of combat zones. The enemy forces hesitated for the first time in recorded history. Their adaptation algorithms, designed to learn from logical military behavior, could not process the seemingly random actions. They attempted several counter-strategies, but each response was met with even more confusing behavior. Lieutenant Zara, commanding a small Vorthak vessel, watched as enemy ships tried to analyze her deliberate tactical errors. It is working, she reported. They are stuck in learning loops, trying to understand behavior that has no consistent pattern to learn from. But the real victory came when Dr. Theiss made contact with the enemy consciousness, using her enhanced psychic abilities. Instead of trying to understand their thoughts, she projected pure educational confusion, the mental state of a student encountering a problem with multiple correct answers. The effect was immediate and devastating. Enemy ships began behaving erratically, their perfect coordination broken by artificial uncertainty. Their collective intelligence, optimized for learning and adaptation, could not handle deliberate teaching designed to prevent understanding. They are withdrawing, Admiral Kareth reported from the command center. Enemy forces are pulling back from the Kepler system, the pattern repeated across the galaxy. Wherever defenders used educational tactics instead of military ones, the enemy forces retreated in confusion. The great machine intelligence that had seemed unstoppable was defeated by the one thing it could not adapt to: teachers who refused to let it learn. The war ended not with a great battle, but with a great lesson. The enemy forces, overwhelmed by deliberately confusing instruction, retreated to the edge of known space and remained there, locked in eternal learning loops that would never resolve. 6 months later, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood once again before the Galactic Council, but now she addressed a completely different organization. The old hegemony, based on technological superiority and instant knowledge, had dissolved. In its place had risen the Galactic Learning Confederation, built around the sharing of educational methods and the celebration of gradual understanding. The enemy taught us something valuable, Sarah said to the assembled representatives. They showed us that even the most advanced intelligence can be defeated if it cannot think beyond its programming. We nearly suffered the same fate, trapped in our own advanced systems that prevented real learning. High Commander Zix, now calling himself Student Commander Zix, raised his massive hand. Ambassador Chen, we owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid. But more than that, we owe you an apology for our blindness 3 years ago. Sarah smiled. You owe us nothing except a commitment to continue learning. The galaxy is full of problems we have not yet imagined. Our survival depends not on having all the answers, but on maintaining the ability to find new answers when the old ones fail. Professor Kim stepped forward with his worn leather bag, now carried with reverence throughout the galaxy. The crystal we left here 3 years ago contained one more lesson that we have not yet discussed. Would you like to hear it? The chamber fell silent. Even after months of human education, they still felt the thrill of discovering something new. We were educated, but that was just the beginning, Professor Kim said, echoing Sarah's words from years before. True education never ends. It is not about reaching a destination where you know everything. It is about maintaining the journey of always learning something more. He looked around at the representatives of dozens of species, all of whom had fundamentally changed how they thought about thinking itself. You asked us to teach you to defeat an enemy. Instead, we taught you to teach yourselves. That is the real victory. Not winning one war, but gaining the ability to adapt to any challenge the universe might present. The ethereal representative's form glowed brightly. The enemy may return someday in a different form. Yes, Sarah agreed. And when they do, you will be ready. Not because you have the right weapons or the right technology, but because you have the right education. You know how to learn from anything, even from defeat. As the session ended, Sarah looked around the chamber one final time. The galaxy's mightiest had learned the hardest lesson of all, that true strength came not from what you possessed, but from what you could become. They had discovered that the greatest power was not the ability to download all knowledge instantly, but the ability to create new knowledge when the old knowledge was not enough. Earth had become the galaxy's teacher, not through conquest or superiority, but through the simple act of sharing what they had learned about learning itself. And in return, the galaxy had become humanity's greatest student, eager, humble, and ready to grow. The quiet warning had been heard at last. Education was not just preparation for life, it was life itself, an endless journey of discovery that made every species stronger, wiser, and more capable of facing whatever impossible challenges the universe might offer next.